Well, hello everybody. We are hopefully now live. This is the May Discover Dorico session. I don't think there's a lot to talk about today. What would you like to talk about? Anything in particular? Let's have a quick look at the comments. So far in here, we've got people from lots of places joining us. What would you all like to talk about today? Anything in particular? No, I don't think there's anything. Yeah, well, there's been a little announcement today. Maybe you'd like to see some things in Dorico 2. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, let's get started. Apparently it's World Otter Day, so let's talk about that. No. So today I'm going to try and cover some video stuff, system track, controller lanes, large time signatures, something called slash notation, rhythmic notation stuff, some maybe Divisi stuff, some other composer tool things. I might mention Note Performer, microtones, things like that. Maybe let's have a look. So to start off with, actually you've missed the splash screen. There's a very nice new splash screen that I like, but you've missed that. This is the new hub that we have in Dorico. So you've got a new empty project over here and all the things you'd expect, but you can now see the news and video tutorials a bit more easily on the right hand side. Anthony's done a lot of nice work on how all of these things now look in Dorico. So let's open a project and have a look at some of these things. As always, hopefully you can all hear me. I will show you a lot of the shortcuts and things I'm using on screen. So, for example, when I press a key, you should be able to see it flash up on the screen. So if I forget a shortcut, those kind of things, then hopefully we'll be able to see what's going on. So one of the first things I thought we'd talk about is video. Adding video to a project. So in Dorico now, if you're in setup mode in your with the flows at the bottom down here, I can right click on this one, I can select video attach, and I can choose a video file and attach a video. So let's have a look. I've probably got one in here that we can use. Let's have a look in this one for a time-lapse video of Stockholm. Haven't been there recently. Daniel, I don't believe you. I always sound wonderful. So the video properties window will pop up. So as the video has been added, we're using the same video engine here as Nuendo and Cubase. So thank you to the guys in Hamburg who've been working on that. Because that gives us the same options that we can now use in Dorico. So in this video properties window, you can see we can set frame rates, number of frames per second. You can also choose some drop frame rates as well in there. There's other things where you want this video to start from. So do you want this says flow attachment position because the video is attached to a flow. So if your project has multiple flows, you can have multiple videos. So if you wanted it to start 2 bars in 4/4, for example, then you could add 8 beats here and it would start a couple of bars in. There's a video start offset and a timecode start as well. You can also come back to that at any time. So let's just flick over to write mode. There's a new video window over here. I'm now on the right hand side in this panel over here. If I select that one, I'll just move this video out of the way for a minute. There's a properties button up here as well, so you can also get to video properties up there. This video window is resizable, so if I just drag this and move it around, I can resize it. Obviously, I can put it on another screen, and the shortcut for that one is F4 if you want to get rid of it or bring it back again. So lots of options in there. You can fast forward and rewind, and obviously it keeps in sync. So if I just press play in the background under here, I'd started to add a bit of music in here just so we had something to play in the background. But you can also use, for example, the fast forward rewind buttons on your keyboard. So on my Mac here, it's F9. You may on some computers need to use function with some of these shortcuts. The way I have mine set up, I don't need to. So I can go forwards, I can go backwards, and that moves moving in seconds. I can also use Command and F9 if I want to move in frames, so I can move through the video just very slightly, and I'll do the same backwards. So there's options there to get to where you want to be. What you might want to do, of course, is in our preferences, show playhead when stopped, because then that gives you a much better idea of where you are in this video. So now you can see, if I just move this video slightly out of the way, you can see the green playback line here. So as I'm fast forwarding and rewinding or gradually, then you can see that moving. And when you get to a point in the video, so let's have a look at our video. Maybe there's I think there's a bit of a scene change here. So let's say it's going to happen just here. You can then add a marker. There's a number of ways you can do this. In the right menu, there is an option for create marker, or there's a shortcut here as well. So you can use either of those two, and it will create a marker up here. You see it says marker. Also in my list now it says marker, and I've labeled one of them. So you can edit them in a number of ways, but one way is just to double click it here and edit a marker in there. So I've got flash, edit, and marker. So maybe I'll say that's a scene change, or maybe it was a transition or something. There's also a third column here, which is imp, which stands for important. So you can tick one or more of these important markers. And then a useful option is this down here, which says find tempo. And if I click on find tempo, it loads this little window here. Now, here I'm going to leave this on the beat units of crotchets. I can set a tempo range. So if I know roughly what I want the range of tempos to be, I can drag these sliders until I get the range that I need. And then it's calculating. And if I move these all the way up, actually, you'll see on the left-hand side over here, it's calculating BPMs. So inside that range. So let's bring these in a bit. There we go. So now we have some options here. And what it's doing is it's looking at our important markers, and it's working out that it's at 171 BPM. We have here some important frames off. So it's the average number of frames off for the important markers, or the non-important ones, or the average for all markers. So this is saying at 171, there are it's at 0, so for the important frames, which is good. And more specifically, on the right-hand side here, you can see that the frames off is 0, and the time difference is actually bang on, which is quite hard to do, but I've managed it for somehow. And this one down here, this important one, is minus 0.016 seconds, or minus 11/960th notes. So if you had some very small notes, then that's what it's showing you in there. So this one here, for example, as you scroll down some of these and select some of these others, so there may be this one at 131. It says -2 in the frames off, and there's a time difference and a note difference again. So you can choose the one that would work best. So I'm going to choose 171 because that's pretty good. Now, I did tick a couple of important markers. This only works if you have a couple ticked, because it needs something to work with. So I'll press apply on that and press close. And then at the beginning of my file, here we go. It's now put in my metronome marking of 171. Also, you can look at the markers in play mode. So in play mode here, you can see we've got my video loaded in here, and there's also markers listed. So let's just move this video out of the way for a minute. So if I scroll around in here you can see my markers. There's flash, there's edit, and here is scene over here. They're a good visual reference in play mode as well. And they're also useful as bookmarks. So even in this panel on the right-hand side, if I select the markers here, then you can see that the score is moving to those points. So they're very useful as bookmarks. And you don't have to have a video to use markers. It may be that you don't have the video attached, or you don't have the space right now for it, but you know where the markers are that you want to be and still work to them. You don't have to be displaying the video or even have it attached to the project. And the video isn't actually part of the Dorico file, it's just attached alongside. So you can send just the Dorico file to somebody without having to send all of the video file along with it. Also, there's a nice little option in the layout options. When you go to markers now and show markers, and you can choose whether you want the markers to appear in any of the layouts or not. So it may be that one score you do want them to appear in, and another version of the score you don't want them to appear in. But also, where do you want them to appear, above, below, or you can have a timecode staff. So if I just press apply on that one and move this out of the way, now you'll see there's a timecode staff which has appeared at the top of my score here. So I've got a timecode on each of the bar lines there, and you can see the markers appearing on there as well. And there's a few other options for what you want to display and how you want those kind of things to display. So that's a lot of video things. Let me just quickly check. I think people are answering things. Oh, yes, I've missed that bit. Yes, sorry. Yeah. So in the mixer, so here's our video window. Of course, F3 F4 is the video window, F3 is the mixer, and F2 is the transport. And there are buttons up here, of course. So we've got a video window and a mixer and the little transport pop out here. So the transport one will show me the time code. The mixer now has an extra video option here. So if I scroll along to the right-hand side, over here, you'll see when I press video, I'll then get a video fader. So if there's audio on that video, then you can optionally bring up the fader for the audio that's also on that video. And it has mute and solo buttons as well. Let me just check, is there anything else? Multiple, that's later. Tempo, yes. Yeah, I think that's. If I've missed any questions, I'm sure somebody will let me know. So keep asking in the comments if I've missed anything on that. So I also just temporarily turned off this little thing up here, which is system track. And this tends to appear by default now. And you can see these grey boxes. And as I hover over them, I'll just zoom out a bit. As I hover over them, you'll see they kind of change just slightly. But most of the time, they're kind of out of the way. And it's a useful thing to sit up there. This is called the system track. If I select it, then it goes orange. And you can see this on option here. I was using a shortcut for system track. In the view menu, system track, Alt-T has its own shortcut. So you can toggle this on and off at any point. So when it's on and you select a bar like this one, for example, it goes orange and there's a big trash can, bin, recycle bin, whatever you want to call it. And there's also a plus up here and there's a little square. This basically lets you do things in a system kind of way. So if I press this button here, then it selects all the way through the system. So it's an easy way of selecting everything, doing a system selection. I can also use shift and select other bars, so I can extend the range of this if I want to. And then there's a little plus up here, and the plus is a quick way of adding bars. So I'll just zoom out a bit so you can see what's about to happen. If I press the plus, then because I've got 3 bars selected, it will enter 3 bars here so that it's adding in some extra time, which is useful. Also, if you then have too many, you can use the rubbish bin to delete them, and you can select some bars and delete them. So there's a useful system track option there. Also, if you hold down the Alt key, then let me just zoom in a bit here. If you hold down the Alt key, then you should see that now the rhythm grid is now shown on here as well. So now if I click into here and drag, then I can select a number of beats or bits of, at this point we're selecting quavers because that's what's listed down here, 8th notes for anybody not in my country. And now if I press plus, it's just going to add that selected amount of time in here. So at the point where the plus is, it's adding in that bit of extra time. So yes, I still like using the bars pop over and adding in, a number of bars at the end of a piece and that kind of thing when I know how many bars I want. But it's easier just to make a selection and say this selection, however long it is, I need that again, please. Then the system track's quite useful for inserting and deleting individual bits, and also for selecting things. So here I can make the selection of just those beats all the way through all of the music if I then wanted to copy it, repeat it, or anything else. So that's the system track. Let me just have a quick check. Can we turn off system track by default? That's been answered. Yes, there's a preference to show the system track in new projects, general preference for that. At the moment, it's always pinned to the top staff. Maybe we'll change it one day, but at the moment, it is pinned to the top staff, so it can move off the screen. And Paul's also highlighted that with the video audio, it's part of the audio signal chain, so that you can use EQ and effects if you wanted to. So let's move on. So other things. I suppose slightly similar. Let's jump into play mode again. So in play mode, you might have noticed when I was in here, I mentioned we have the new video option here, and there's a markers track in here. Right at the top now, there's a time option as well. So if I just expand this a bit, I'm dragging on this. You see there's a little section down here on the left that I can use to change that. So now we have this line which is set at the metronome marking that was set at the beginning of the piece. So it's set at 171. If you want to make a change to this, oops, I'll make that a bit bigger. You can use the pencil tool now, and you can draw in changes to the the tempo here. So if I make some changes here, you'll see that my markers are moving, because obviously as the time changes, then the markers would also need to move. So I can draw these in with a pencil, as many as I like, or you can use the line tool here option, and you can drag a line if you just want to make a more gradual change over time to where things will appear. So you can draw those in there to make fine adjustments to things. You can also decide if you want to. You can have them appear on the score, and either show up as signposts if you want those kind of things to appear, but that's from the time option up there. And then for each of the individual instruments that are listed here, there's two new buttons. One of them is the playing techniques option that we had before. So this is that shows you if you've got natural or mute playing techniques and that kind of thing. But there's also another button here now which gives you controller information. So if I expand this one so we can play with this one a little bit, if I click on the option here, I can choose one of the MIDI controllers, so CC0 all the way up. And if I choose, I choose 7 because it was already there, then I can choose my pencil tool and I can draw in MIDI controller messages in here as well. And the same with the line option. I can also do more gradual changes just from point A to point B if I use the line tool. So now when you want to do more things with MIDI controllers for realistic mock-ups, for whatever reason, for all sorts of sample libraries or for anything else that you're doing, you can now just simply draw those in. There's no plugins required or anything else. It's just part of Dorico in play mode. So along with these existing editing that you could already do up here with the individual notes, you now have these. At the moment, you do only have one controller lane displayed, but you can affect multiple controllers. And if there is something you want to assign yourself, and you can do that just by selecting in here, find the individual controllers, draw those in. So let's just have a quick check on, have I missed anything, confused anybody with any of those? Bear with me a second. No, I think we're okay on so far on comments. So all of the MIDI controller lanes, however you want to describe those. Automation is often a word used. You can do those in here. And if you are controlling things like soft synths or anything like that, then you'll see in the software the knobs and things move, of course, to follow the controller changes that you've set in Dorico. And if you export this file now as a MIDI file, so if you're then taking this into Cubase, then of course all that MIDI data and the controller messages that you've drawn in, they would also be exported with the MIDI file that you could then import into Cubase. Other DAWs are available. Let's move on for a second. So I'm just going to load another file. Now this file is basically the film template that exists in Dorico. So one of the options that one of the requests, I suppose, that people wanted in here was, of course, to do with time signatures. So as you see here, we've got standard time signatures, as you'd have seen in Dorico 1, and there's a number of options and things you can change in here. So if I now go into layout options and time signatures, you can choose the size. So we've got the standard ones here, and if I just move this over a bit, we've also got some larger ones. So if I press apply, you've got some large time signatures here. These aren't probably the size you want, really. You probably want to choose maybe a narrow serif font version, or possibly a narrow sans serif font version of those. So if I just move this option out of the way, you can now see those are appearing in every time there's a new time signature. You're getting one of those per bracketed family of instruments. And you'll notice also down here, we've got side drum has some, and then the harps and keyboards have individual ones, and then the string section have their own. So if I go into engraving options and look at my time signatures, so of course this is different to the layout options I've already set. So those layout options that we've already set, you can decide per layout. So if you have one score or some parts that you want large time signatures on, you can set those on a per layout basis. But then you also have some options in here for what happens to some of these and what size they are. So the engraving options for the whole project let you set a size for time signatures centered on the brackets and braces. So a size for an individual staff. If you've got 2 or 3 staves, what the size would be. And if you have 4 or more staves, what the size would be. So you can set different sizes for those, which is what you're seeing here on the score with a number of different sizes. You also have options here where you can set top. So the vertical alignment relative to the bracket, in a lot of cases, instead of being centered, so I just go back up to the top here, this is centered in the family of instruments here. I can press apply, and it will now sit at the top of those. And you can also choose that brackets for percussion and keyboards are treated as a single bracket. So down here where we've got percussion and keyboards, if I choose that option and press apply, then you'll see I just get one large one here. So what some people would prefer is, let me just move those away for a second. What some people would prefer is to see this one where we've basically got 4, because all of this family has all got the same options. And if you want, again, you want those in the middle, then you can set them in the middle of all of those families. There's also an option which in our layout options, the last option you might want to choose from here, is to choose the system object positions above. So if I just choose that one, so where the system object positions are, I'm just going to put this back to a bigger size so we can see them on the video. So they're at the top up here. And then you could also, of course, choose in the staves and systems bit, which I've done on screen. In the staves and systems layout options, you could say actually also above the strings and let's say brass, please also show me. So now above the brass, we've got time signatures, and at the top and above the strings. So there's multiple options here for where do you want the the time signatures to appear, whether you want them to be narrow or not. You can there's also plain font option, so if you want to choose more of the font options for those and how they display, then all of those are in there as well. So hopefully that kind of covers most of the bases. I know for some people large time signatures are an absolute necessity, but also setting exactly where and what size and how is also very important. I'm just going to quickly check the comments again. Morning, Mr. Wardrobe. I'm surprised you're still up, but thank you for joining us. Can I move the... Yes, sorry, Peter Ruse, I've just shown that. So moving to the top of the group, so appearing over the flute and then over the top of the percussion, that's exactly what we've got here. Yes, there we go. So let's move on to something else. So one of the things that a lot of people need to use is slash notation or rhythmic slashes, or however you want to describe them. Apart from a small argument appearing on Facebook yesterday about whether this was so somebody's saying, "Oh, it's just lazy." It really isn't. It's a very useful way to tell people what you want them to play without necessarily having to give them all of the notes that they need to play, because they can add their own style to it. So here we've got some blank bars with some chords, and we want to do some slash notation. There's a number of options we can and ways we can do this. So here's a couple of them. In the right menu, you could just do create slash region, and that will create a slash region. And what this has done, because we're in 6/8, this has created me a slash region in 6/8. The slash regions know what they should be doing. So if I change this to 4/4, for example, then I get a slash region displaying in 4/4. And there are also some preferences to say in 6/8, do you want the rhythm dot or not? Or in 12/8, do you want the rhythm dot? Things like that. But I just, when you switch the time signature, it says, well, in that case, in this slash region, this bar will need this many slashes, because that's that's what you would normally see. So this is a slash region. You'll see it's highlighted in green. If you don't like those, then there's a highlight slash regions option here, and you can turn that off if you don't want to see them. But a useful thing if you are seeing them is when you're maybe partway through this slash region, if you press U, which is also the scissors shortcut over here. Now, you've probably only used that before to split ties, to split a tie chain, but you can also now use it to split other things like this. So if I press U, you'll notice the only real difference here is that I've now got a different green color here. So I've got 2 slash regions, and if I select this one's now a different slash region, and you can see it's got a different drag handle here. So I can drag this if I wanted to. If I want to make this region bigger or smaller, then I can drag those 2 individually because I've split the region in half. The other ways you might want to do slashes are sometimes you want to actually not just have those slashes, you need rhythmic slashes with effectively like normal notes, but they're slash note heads, so you still want the stems and tails. So for this one, you can say what I'm going to do is, instead of creating a voice when you have more than one rhythm on the same staff, you can create a slash voice, a very similar shortcut. So instead of Shift V, it's Alt Shift V. So now you see my down here, I've got a little slash. Let me just zoom in and make sure you can see that. I've got a little slash voice. So now when I choose a rhythm and press, for example, a pitch, I'll press D. It doesn't enter a D, it enters a slash. And I can enter some more notes like this. So I can now press V to toggle between normal notation and slash notation, and it will put all of those even in the same bar, and it will sort out the voices and that kind of thing. It will switch between them, and you can enter what you need. And if I was in that bar, for example, and then I was to say I did want a note in this bar, then I could carry on, or I could switch back to normal notation and do it that way. And you can very easily switch between slashes and non-slash notation. Of course, because they're voices, you can also say things like this note here is the voice ends immediately, so it doesn't display the rests underneath if you don't want them. So you have a lot of control over what actually happens with these and how you use them. These notes, actually, if you look at them in play mode, so if I just expand this bit here, they do actually have a pitch. So the pitches that I entered are actually, it's been remembered. And if I wanted to at any point, I could say, actually, with all of these notes here, excuse me, I can go to voices, rhythmic slashes, whoops, and I can choose to turn them back to normal notes. So you can, and you could do the opposite. So you can say, actually, those notes that I entered as notes, please just make them slashes, and it will automatically put them in the middle here. And it's not just putting them in the middle just because it's that's where they're supposed to go. So if you have something like a tenor saxophone which transposes, in some software when you do things like slashes, let's go back to my full score. If I was to copy these over to the tenor saxophone, especially if you were to look, for example, in the parts, then you might see some of them transpose or something else. So you won't get that. The slashes will sit in the middle. You can move them if you want to. So if you need some slashes to be somewhere else, then there is a slash position option, and you can say from one or more slashes that you want it to appear maybe at the top. So, for example, if you've got a bar with something else happening underneath it, and you need to move the slashes to somewhere else in the bar, then they will do that. But it's not a kind of a transpose option. It's not because they are the note B or anything else to sit in the center line. So there's a lot of options there that you can, and ways of controlling it. And maybe what we'll do in some other Discover Dorico sessions is use some of these features, the video feature and the controller lanes and the large time signatures and these slash options, and create some projects and kind of show how we'd put more of these together. But I hope this gives you an idea to start off with. There's a couple of other options and things you can do in here. So let me just delete some of these. There's a new popover. So, for example, in here, if I press Shift R, then there's, actually, I'll do it over a few bars. If I press Shift R, then I get this little repeats popover. So I can say slash, and then I can create slash regions that way. So I don't need to use the menu. I can similarly say things like well, actually, let's put in some, actually, let's do that. So let's say those are slashed. And these two bars, if I use the same popover, I can type %. And then press enter, and that will give me the repeat bar symbol. So let's make a bit more space for these. So I'll make them over a longer section. So % is a useful repeat bar symbol, and again you can expand and contract this region if you need to. You can cut it in half if you need to. And if I select this section here, you can say things like %2, and you can create 2 bar, you can do 4 bar, you can even do 3, although be careful with that one. And there's a number of options here for repeat bars. Now, at the moment, the repeat bar symbols, so these that we have selected, they're not going to play back. We do aim to do that, but at the moment, they don't do it out of the box in Dorico 2.0. But there's a lot of display options for these, and of course, they all have preferences as well. So how do you want some of these things to display? You can have them this way as well, so they're individual, and this is the 4th repeat of this bar. So this would be this bar here, repeat it. So this is the 4th repeat, and you can display how many times do you want that to happen. Do you want that to say every 4 bars? It tells you how many there were. These options, you can say, what's the count frequency and the count appearance. So it's not the Sesame Street count, it's the little count number here. So you can set those kind of options. There's all sorts of options and things that you can use in those. If I just load another couple of files, then we can see some of these options as well. So here's a kind of lead sheet style piece. Now this one actually also uses the new jazz font. So there's a new jazz font called Petaluma. So, and just to prove, I suppose, how it works, let me go back to the one I was on. So in my chord regions we just created, if you go to engrave mode and engrave and music fonts, then you can choose this new font. There you go. If you're wondering where you've heard it, Petaluma is the city, town in California where Share Music is based. So you can just choose that and apply that font to the music. So if I go back to the lead sheet I was just looking at, how is that the fourth repeat in the count? Just reading the yes, Matthew. I was using the single. I was probably bad on my part, but I was using the single bar repeat option, and then it was play that C7 and then play it. I know. Play that bar again, play that bar again, play that, which is then the fourth time. So that's why it was the fourth repeat in the count frequency. It wasn't a great way of showing that, but there you go. Let me just check if were there any other questions, comments. I think that's okay at the moment. So also when you're looking at things like slashes and that kind of thing, in our engraving options, do we have options? Funnily enough, we do. So in the notes section, which is where you can change the size of the note heads and the note names and the figure notes and the choral scale degree options and the rhythm dots and various other things, the rhythmic slashes option. So you have slashes with stems. You can also make a voice without stems. So as well as the slashes where I just put in a slash region, I can create another voice which is slashes showing but without stems if I don't want them. And then you get a choice here of what's going on. So you can say standard, small or oversized with stems or without stems. So here we've got some with stems and some without. And the ones without are currently oversized, but I could make those, for example, small. Let me just make this dialog smaller so I can see it on the screen. In fact, I'll push it over here and make it sit over there. There we go. So I can press apply on that one. So now they're small ones, but I could make this notation go small, or I can make that one go oversized, or I can make the without stems be oversized. So you have multiple size options for the slashes and the various options to see, what would the best case be for this piece. This is also where you've got things like I mentioned earlier, you've got an option here to show rhythm dots or not in compound time signatures, depending on whether you want those or not with your slash notation. So I'll just scroll down so you have a look at some of this one. There's also a couple of other nice options. So for example, the text items now, when you if I make a new text item, here we go. So oops. So that was just the Shift X text item. For any of these text items now in the properties panel, you can add a border. It's just an option that we needed, obviously. And so you can now add those as well. So for labeling things like that, you've now got borders on text items. I think that's most of those. And we did some repeat bar regions. So for a moment, at least, let's move on. Otherwise, we're going to be here all day, which might be okay, but some of you might have homes to go to. If you need to, of course, this session is being recorded. So if you need to press pause and make another cup of tea, please do so. You can come back later if you want to watch any of these, and I will time annotate in the comments underneath the YouTube video afterwards. So if you need to jump back into any of these, then you can also do that and have a look at some of these options later should you need to. So next, let me just check a second. Sorry, bear with me a second. I think the comments have mostly been answered. Daniel's on there as well, answering comments on there. Thank you, Daniel, and Paul and various other members of the team, actually. So yes, if I don't answer things that I'm sure somebody else will in the comments. So one of the other features we've been talking about, if you looked at the blog or Facebook or anything else today, is about staff management. So here we have a single violin. Now, importantly here, this is a section player. So this is the difference between the solo players and the section players. So just to cover all bases, the solo players are people who can double. So a solo violinist may also be able to double on something. It's more commonly things like flute can double on piccolo, or saxophone can double on clarinet, things like that. Section players is a desk of first violinists or second violinists, for example, and it's commonly the string players, or more commonly the string players who might want to split and divide, known as divisi. So let's say we've got bar 1 here, but in bar 2 we need to do a divisi section. So I'm going to right click, and from the staff option here I'll do change divisi. I get this new dialog here called for change divisi, and I can add solo or section players. So in a basic split, I'll just add another section divide here. So I've got 1 and 2. You can have individual labels for each section if you want them. There's also a grouping option that I'll come back to in a minute. In fact, no, let's add them in a group. Select both of those, put them in a group. There we go. Here we have a group. So we'll leave it for now so you can see what all of the options are going to do. So it now says group and 1 and 2. So if I can double click on this little divisi label now if I want to, and I've got options here to show or hide the group names or the player names, and I can relabel this. So if I wanted to put violins or something back in there, then I can do. You've got labeling options for the staves in there. Now, when I'm entering notes, so the divisi hasn't happened at this point. So if I enter some notes into here, you see it's entering them into both staves at the same time. And then as soon as I get to bar 2, it's only entering it into 1. And that's because down here, this is now a separate. So you can now enter anything you like as a when the violins then divide. So of course that will then appear in the parts as well. So this is just a simple quick case of when you need the violins to divide and how you do it. Then it may be that later on that that they want to go back, but let's just expand this section a bit. So we'll say we've got a few bars of very boring the same stuff, and then maybe at some point you then want to go back. So you can just say staff restore tutti. In fact, let's add some more bars so we can see a bit more what's going on. So in this bar here, we'll do restore tutti. So Dorico is now drawing, although the restore tutti is here, it's now completing the end of the system at the moment, and then it's going back to what we had before. So if I was to enter some more notes in here, for example, then you can see it started to copy them again because it's gone back to how it was and then carried on. If I was to put in a system break, for example, here, then it wouldn't need to copy those anymore. So it's made them individual. And similarly up here, if I put in a system break here, then it doesn't need to copy those either. So it's it is a proper smart management of the stage that's going on here to work out when you need these things to appear and when you don't. It's also very useful for choral staves, so when you've got SATB and you want them to split or not, then there's various options for there. Somebody's asked, can you split into more than 2 parts? I think maybe you knew what was coming, but maybe you didn't. So here is another example where there's a few more splits and things going on. So that was a simple example just to show you how some of these things might be set up. But if we scroll down on this one, a little part of Rite of Spring. So in this one here, the violas, we're coming along here just with 1 staff, and then they've split here, and they've gone to 6 violas. And the cellos have 2 solis, and there's small cellos down here, and then there's 2 basses down here. So there's multiple splits going on. Then you can see here the divisi stops again. And now I'm in galley view at the moment, so I can have one long continuous piece of music. So as a composer, which I'm not, but as a composer, you can just keep writing the music and do your divides or joins whenever you need them to be. And then Dorico will work the rest of the things out for you. So at the moment, it's showing me sections here where there isn't any music because I didn't need the division at that point. You can see where the division happens, and you can you can decide when those divisions happen and when they go away again. So you can see there's various divisions happening in this example file. And then the idea then, of course, is that when you then switch to any of the parts or anything else, then it will all be sorted out automatically. So the violin 2s don't really do any splits, but the violin 1s do. So they've got splits in there. Obviously, the full score does. And then if you go to page view, for example, then the splits and things will be then handled more automatically in here, and you can write all of the music in galley view. So hopefully that kind of gives you a simple example of how you would go about setting that up, and a slightly more complicated way of doing it. So to add a Divisi, you can select a bar, right click, and go to Staff, Change Divisi. That will cause this little dialog to pop up, and you can choose the options in here. And then you can do the same. You can just do the same, and you can say Restore Tutti when you don't want it anymore. There's also some options in there. In fact, you would have just seen them. So we also have Add Staff Above, Add Staff Below, Create Ossia Above, and Create Ossia Below, and Remove Staff. So if you're writing piano music or organ music and you need an extra staff above or below, then you can add an entire new staff above or below if you need it. There's also options for ossia. So let's have a little example of one of those. So it's not quite such a big piece. Here we go. So here's a little ossia, and you do that just by selecting a staff. Let's do one below as well. So create ossia below. So you can have a little staff down here. Just going to turn off the playback line. It's a bit large at the moment, isn't it? Playhead, there we go. So so now when you're writing music on this staff here, you can just press the down arrow, or you can just double click on this ossia staff down here and write music on this staff. So anything you wanted to put in there. The ossia staves won't play back because they're not supposed to. But for showing editorial options and that kind of thing. There's also some bar lines options right at the bottom of the bar lines section for what do you want to happen with the bar lines for ossia staves. Do you want them to be joined or not, or the same type, or a dashed bar line join? Do you want the bar lines at the start and end, or only at the end, or no bar line at all for the little examples? There's also some there's various other options as well for some of these. So for example, in staves, here we go, there's some ossias for the scale factor. So by default it's 2/3 of the size of a normal staff, but you can change that. The labeling offset, if you need them, and what happens with some of these, and brackets and mid-bar ossias and those kind of things. Of course, as you'd expect, there's a number of options that you can do with those as well. So you can add those and remove them. You can also select a staff and say, at some point, I'd like to remove this staff. So you can take a bit out if you don't want that bit. So there's a number of staff management tools in there as well. I'm just going to check the comments again for a second. Yes, from a Divisi standpoint, at the moment, they are all on the same MIDI channel. We do have plans for them not to be, but at the moment, they are on the same MIDI channel. You will, in the future, get hopefully some voice-independent playback for the different Divisi staves. You could put them on different MIDI channels if you wanted to. The Divisi voices for one staff for violin and condensing it for the score, extrapolating it for parts. Justin, that's basically the opposite of what we've done at the moment, what we would call condensing. So that would be where you would write music for, let's say, two instruments, let's say 2 clarinets, and you want to create 2 clarinet parts, but on the score you want it to be combined to just show one staff with effectively 2 voices with both clarinets on the same staff. That's what we call condensing, and we haven't done it yet. It's more complicated, but we do have plans for that. So watch this space, but it's not a part of this Divisi feature at the moment. The Divisi feature is the opposite, where in the score and in the parts you'll see them expand out to multiple staves, and you want to show those multiple staves in both the score and the parts. So I think we'll move on for a second. I think I've answered those, or if I haven't, somebody else has, which is good. So there are a couple of other options that I think will be useful. These are kind of a composer tools type options. So in this one here, we have a piano part here. I can select this piano part from here. So we've got some notes and chords selected down here. I can press copy and select these instruments here. We now have an explode type option. It's a lovely term, isn't it? I want to explode my music. So you can do this, of course, by right-clicking, or you can go to Paste Special and Explode. And that will explode those notes over more instruments. And you can choose which staves you want to explode onto, and you can miss out a staff if you control click to deselect one and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of options there for well, a lot of flexibility. We've designed this not necessarily with lots of options and things in it, but the idea is to give you consistent options so that you know what's going to happen when you copy and paste those kind of things with the explode option. There's also, I mean, you may want to try a few more of these examples. I also noticed on the Scoring Notes blog, they've been talking about what happens with some of these with the explode options and comparing it to some other software as well. So either in the trial version, or of course, if you upgrade to Dorico 2, then have a play with some of those options. It's also very useful. There's a multi-copy option now for not only for notes, but also for dynamics. So those kind of things will happen as well. So there's options there. Also, a couple of nice little options I like, especially when you're editing things like MIDI files. If you've imported something or you've played something in and you've got this, so if I select these notes really should be on the bottom part of the piano. There's now some options in here for moving these around. In fact, I'm just going to use the shortcut. So if I just press Alt-M, then it will move those down to the bottom. There's also options for duplicating those, so if you want to keep them in the top staff, but you can move stuff with Alt-N and Alt-M. The reason it's N and M is that it's the same as the cross-staff beaming shortcuts. They are N and M, N for nuts, M for mother. So Alt-M just then moves them down to the bottom staff, and you can do that to up or down a staff, which is quite nice, as well as the duplication options. There's also a nice little option if you, for example, got this where actually you've inputted 3 notes or more notes and you wanted them to be a tuplet. Then there's a new options to scale these notes into a tuplet. So if you select those notes and press the tuplet shortcut, which is semicolon, then you get the little popover, and then I can just press enter. I could put 3 in there, but it's already suggested what the tuplet ratio might be. You can change it, but I'm just going to press enter, so it will make those into a tuplet. So little editing things like that are also very nice, where when you've got some things that you're trying to tidy up, clean up, or you've put the notes in, as I said, as quavers, eighth notes, and they should have been triplets, you don't have to delete them anymore. You can now just easily make them into tuplets. There's also, while I've got one here, there's a nice little option with dynamics. So if I go to engrave mode and move this dynamic so it sits over the bar line, this isn't maybe a great case for this, but sometimes they will sit over a bar line. In our properties panel now, there's an erase background option. So if I just tick that, then I get an erased background around that dynamic. So if it happens to sit over a bar line, then it will be much clearer to see on there as well. There's also, so I was looking at the explode type options, so taking some notes from, for example, that piano staff, exploding it out onto some other instruments. There's also the option, the other reverse option that you might have seen. And one case is where you want to reduce things down. So let's take these string parts for, let's say, I don't know if this section will do. Oh, I should try selecting all of them, really. I've got multiple mice here and I've accidentally clicked on the wrong one. There we go. Let's do that and take all of those notes. In fact, let's take these ones as well. And we'll copy those. And down here, we've got a little piano part at the bottom. So we're making a piano reduction. So again, I can right click or I can go to Paste Special, Reduce. And it'll take those notes and reduce them down to a piano part. What's nice actually in this little example is it started out here and then it's gone, oh look, it's split into octaves. So it's taken the octave split and added those to the piano as well. So obviously in some cases you'll get much bigger examples and other things you might need to sort out in there, but it is a very useful option just to reduce some things down to some other instruments, and that can be one to many type of staves. That was just a piano example. Let me just quickly check again in the comments to see if there's anything that I missed. We don't yet have an option to exchange the content of one staff with another, but we do have a plan for that one as well. Let me just have a look. Something like that. We don't have any. We don't have an idea yet for an ideas hub. As Daniel said, we'd never say never, but not something I think we'll use at the moment. But as Daniel's pointed out, you can use additional flows as a sketchpad. So if you've got a little idea for something that you think, oh, it might not fit in here, but I might want to use it later, then you can just use a new flow for that because it's an independent bit of music, and then you can use that in your project later on. I think that's. I don't think I've missed anything else. Shout if I have. So that was, you can. So moving things between staves above or below when you've entered things on the wrong staves and you need to move a few notes, you can do that. Also, that moving between staves can be very useful if you want to do things like drop voicing type stuff. You can filter out some of the notes, and then you can use the move to staff below to do things like drop voicing and things like that, and giving those notes to another instrument. Another thing I haven't mentioned today so far, I don't think, or maybe I did. There's a new version of Note Performer available. Note Performer hasn't previously been available for Dorico, but Note Performer 3 has been announced also today. It's not one of our products, obviously, but it is now compatible with Dorico. So if you have Note Performer already and you've got Note Performer 1 or 2, it's a free upgrade, I believe, to Note Performer 3. And Note Performer 3 will work with Dorico. So when you're in play mode, you can go to the play menu and you can go to playback template. You can go to the elements playback. We haven't looked at today. There's a version of Dorico 2 called Dorico Elements. We'll look at some of the differences in a second, but on that you can switch if you need to the Elements playback, which is similar to Dorico Pro, but doesn't have the HSO, the Halion Symphonic Orchestra section with it. So you can switch between those, but more importantly in here you can also switch to Note Performer. So if you select Note Performer in here and press OK, it will just automatically load all of your instruments through using Note Performer as a whole playback template. Or you can do it on an individual basis, of course. So in here you'll now have Note Performer will be listed in here as well. So you can choose Note Performer and then you can assign some of your instruments to use Note Performer should you want to. So as another playback option, I know that a lot of people, a lot of Sibelius users, and there was a recent thread on the Sibelius Power Users page, I think it was on Facebook recently, about what do you use for playback? And I'd say there are probably 2/3 or 3/4 or possibly more of the people who are using Sibelius on there say that they either exclusively or also would use Note Performer. So if you like those sounds and it was something you really like working with, you can now use the Note Performer sounds with Dorico as well. Let me just check in the comments again. Sorry, bear with me a second. So there's a couple of other little things that are worth mentioning. I won't have a huge amount of time to go into them today because I've already been talking for a long time, and I apologize for that. One is that microtone playback now works. So you've been able to notate microtones before, no problem. But now with the new audio engine that we have in Dorico, in Dorico 2, then they will also play back. So so if you want to notate any of those, then they automatically play back. They use VST note expression, so it's not a pitch bend thing. I think I've mentioned before that was the plan that we were going to do, and that's now implemented. So if you want to write any music with microtones, then you can do that. Repeat bars will now play back. So if you put in a repeat bar line and do first and second time endings, then they will play back. There's some options for stemless notes. There's a new hide the stem property option. So in our properties panel, so you can use that one if you need to hide some things occasionally. There's some new playing technique options. So if I select playing techniques over here in the panel, there's a plus button to add your own, and there's an edit option. So let's choose, for example, Vib. and press edit. There's whole new dialog here for editing playing techniques, and there's categories for these, but the one I've chosen was vibrato, shown as vib. I could change the text. Somebody mentioned the other day that maybe somebody wants vib. That's what the composer really wanted, so you can change that automatically in here. So you've got options in here for editing your playing techniques, what the playing technique actually is, and you can edit those. There's all sorts of options in here for what you might want to do or edit, but they're all now in there, and you can create your own as well in there. In fact, I've just seen somebody's just mentioned that on the comments. So, okay, sorry, I did get to it. So that Marco, there's the playing techniques editor. So if you want to create or edit your own, then you can do that as well. There's options for things like clefs. Somebody mentioned on Facebook the other day they needed a different option for concert pitch and transpose pitch clefs. You can now do that. So you can right click and choose what you want to happen with the clefs on there. So there's all sorts of other options. Now, so I don't carry on for hours and hours in this session, and I'm sure we can look at some of these in some other future sessions. Let me just tell you a few other things that you need to know, I suppose. So if you want to read more about these kind of things and what's going on, then there's our blog. So it's blog.steinberg.net. And you can read about it on there. If you want to find out more things about Dorico Pro or Dorico Elements, here's a quick list of some of the things that are different between them. So Dorico Pro is an unlimited number of players. Elements is limited to 12 players. So although it's 12 players, they can still double, so a player can still hold more than one instrument, but the number of players is limited to 12. The modes are a bit limited, so in Elements there's no engrave mode, and there's no engrave options. So you'll see further down the table it says notation option and engraving options. So if you just need some notation and you're quite happy with the defaults that we've got in there and the way that we make things look very nice in Dorico, then Dorico Elements may well just do the job for you, and you won't need those. If you need those kind of engraving options and engrave mode, then you will need Dorico Pro for that. But write mode, play mode, print mode, they will all exist in Dorico Elements. The video feature exists in Dorico Elements. All of the play mode stuff with the controller lanes exists in Dorico Elements. You don't have things like cues and Divisi and custom tonality systems and things like that. Also, one of the differences at the bottom there I've mentioned before on the playback, the Halion Symphonic Orchestra isn't included. You still get the Halion Sonic SE3, and that will still have a decent set of instruments in there. And of course, there's a GM set of everything in there, but you won't have the extra HSO. And you can, of course, now use Note Performer if you wanted to for playback. So there's kind of some differences and things in there. But for all the things that we haven't managed to cover today, you can read about things on the blog. So like I said, blog.steinberg.net. Scoring Notes has a review out of lots of the things in Dorico 2 now. There's a version history document, which we've linked to in a number of places at the moment, or you can ask us for. And that's a PDF, which is 35 pages about all the new features and the shortcuts and things that if I've used one and you've missed it or anything else, it tells you all the detail you need to know for all of those. It also has 15 pages of other things that we've tweaked and changed, as well as all the new features that are in here. There's some new videos that Anthony has done on our YouTube channel, very nice videos that you can watch if you prefer to just see individual bits about those features or refer back to them later when you want to know how to do something on one of those. Or, of course, you can ask us questions on the forum or on Facebook. I should tell you how much these things cost. If you already have Dorico 1, then the update to Dorico 2 is priced at €99 or $99. I believe they're about the same at the moment. Or if you're in the UK like I am, then it's £85. Those are all Inc. VAT prices where VAT is applicable. If you bought Dorico after the 2nd of May, the grace period started on the 2nd of May, so you'd then get a free upgrade. Otherwise, it will be €99 or £99. If you haven't bought Dorico yet at all, then yes, we do the boxed version. You'll find is about $579. There's an education price. It's the same product, but an education price on that, which is $349 or euros. If you already own Sibelius or Finale, there's a cross grade, which is at €299 or $299. The Elements version is $100 or €100. So you might want to use that one. But I would mention that if you're in education and already have Sibelius or Finale and you want to use the cross grade, there's also some new pricing where you get 60% off the single price if you buy 5 or more copies. So if you're looking at kind of site license type things, then actually that's a very, very good deal, which is on until October. On that educational price at the moment. You can ask any of our dealers, or you can ask us about that, and we can give you more details later on. So, and of course, our website, if you go to dorico.com, there's a new version of the website which has all the prices and everything on there, or you can just come and find us and ask us online at any point. I'm just going to quickly check the comments again and see if there's anything I missed on there. Can't see anything right now, but I have just skimmed them. So yes, slash notation is available in Elements, if I didn't mention that already. I think that's probably about it. So I'll check some of the comments if there's anything we've missed on there. Well, like I said, you can get in touch with us on social media, or you can of course email me on discoverdorico@steinberg.de if it's about these sessions or things that you want to include. So for the next session, which will be at the end of June, it'll be a Wednesday at the end of June, what would you like to see? What shall we focus on? Is it one of these features and you want to know more about how these things work? Or is it combining a couple of these features in a real life use case for something? Let me know. Or I should also mention the trial version of Dorico 2 will be available in a couple of weeks. So yes, you can buy it today and it's available today and you can download it today and use it if you want to. But if you're not sure yet, then in just a couple of weeks, you'll be able to download the trial version as well if you want to try that one out and have a look at anything. So thank you all for listening. I'm sorry it has been an hour today, but as you can see, there was a lot to cram in. So hopefully that's okay. Come back and watch it again later. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next month. Thank you.